Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
To the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone. I'm condemned to the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
And we're here on another episode of Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie, and this week I've got a special guest, Aimee from Paranormal New Zealand. Welcome, Aimee.
Kia ora, everybody.
How are you going tonight?
Oh, it's a bit wet and wild here, but doing well.
Excellent. So tonight I want to talk about the paranormal and paranormal investigations from a female perspective, because I've observed and I've seen, investigations, and I've been in venues when things happen, and when you get talking to people, you hear and feel about them differently. But Before we do that, just a bit about your paranormal investigation background and stuff, and then we'll get into that.
Sure. So I've been part of Paranormal New Zealand for about 3.5 years now. Before that, we were known as Haunted Auckland. And my background really, I've always been open to experiences, and I had things sort of growing up, but it was only really when I first went on a public event with Haunted Auckland, which was about, gosh, it must be about 10, 12 years ago now, that I actually went out and I saw what you could do with those experiences and see people using the equipment in real life, not just on TV shows like Ghost Adventures. And I went out and we were doing a public event at the King Seat Maximum Security with Mark and the team. And it was a really interesting night in that was the first night probably that I did actually feel something that was a bit different to, as you sort of say, the men around me a little bit. We went into a building and there was nobody else already in the building. It had all been locked up. And we all walked up some stairs and they said, look, you can go left or right, whichever way you want to go. And I sort of looked to the left and went, okay. And I looked to the right and went, no. Just got this feeling something was saying, nope, don't go that way. And I was there with my uncle at the time, and he said, oh, should we go that way? I'm like, no, let's not. And we went the other way. We walked around. We went downstairs a little bit later. We all exited the building. They relocked the building, and we were waiting to go into another building next to it. And so I was just taking some pictures of the building because it was all lit up and it had graffiti on it. And when I reviewed those photos afterwards, in one of the windows in that area where I thought, no, I don't want to go there, there was something caught in that window. It looked like, at the time, I took it to be like someone in a doctor's uniform. So, as you do, quickly showed it to Mark, and as Mark is prone to do, he said, right, let's go debunk it. So, and we went back up the stairs, and I thought, oh, I don't know about this, because I had that feeling. And what happened was I walked up those stairs and suddenly there was no feeling. We went into that room. We couldn't debunk it. We checked the windows. We took extra photos. We did all these sorts of things, and we couldn't recreate it. And that was sort of like, oh, that's really interesting. So from there, I went on a few other public events with them over the years to sort of Howick and the Pump House and all these sort of places. And yeah, I sort of used to share things as I was going out and doing things, and I'd often send them in, say, what do you think of this? And I would comment on their page, as everybody sort of does. And then eventually Mark sort of reached out and said, hey, do you want to try out for the team? It's that magic moment that everyone wishes that, Mark would get in touch with them about. And from there we went on, and I think it was meant to be, because the very first place that they were going to, that they invited me to, was the Waiuku Museum. And that was actually a place that I knew very well, because I used to live in Waiuku and I used to volunteer there every weekend. So I could give them quite an interesting perspective on the place, because I had been there quite often sitting in the dark by myself.
Oh, okay.
And so that's it really. It's just, I've been open to it all my life, and now it is just part of my life. And it's quite funny because it's become part of my daughter's life as well. Okay. She started coming out with us on a couple of investigations here or there, which are the gentler ones.
Yeah.
Helping out with public events, that kind of stuff, and she's really into it.
So when you say open, see, this is the where I want to start going with this. Where I want to start going with this. You see, I've spent a lot of time in theatre over the years because I'm a lighting technician, and in certain theatres I've been in, for example, the one I just spent 10 years in the Globe in Dunedin here, and I've moved on from there and finished up. But there was allegedly the spirit of the caretaker Frank, who was a guy who was a member of the club in the 60s, 70s, and died in the 80s. Now, I think he was gay in life. I don't know. Okay, but just from some other former members' discussions with him, that's probably kind of a little important about what I'm about to say. But apparently, he disliked women being in the upstairs part of the theatre, which was the upstairs part of the house. And one particular room, which was now part of the wardrobe, was his bedroom. And women always used to say when they went into that room that they kind of felt uncomfortable, and things happened. Like my wife was in there. The door could not be locked. There wasn't a lock on the door. It was just a door that the lock had been broken. You'd pull it shut. But several times, including my wife, they'd try to get out the door, and it was as though someone was holding the door. Like, if it makes sense, Leanne was trying to go in, and it was like someone was holding the door. You're not coming in here. Like, you're not going to, and when they did go in there, they felt like someone didn't want them there. But us blokes could walk in, didn't feel a thing, didn't see a thing. And I don't know whether it's women are more attuned psychically or what the story is, or whether that is just true that he didn't like women,
Yeah. I do wonder sometimes if it is that, men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing, where just about your daily life, the way you interpret people. I think women, when they go into a room, they're reading a huge amount of body language and all these signals before anyone opens their mouth. And it's just what you do. And so it automatically happens when you go into a place. You're reading that room. And even if there's nobody in that room, you're reading the energy or whatever in that room, because it's just something that is, I don't know why, it's just what women do, I think. And it's very hard to turn off. Like, there is one place that we go to quite a lot, which is the lake house in Takapuna, and we've got a lot of video footage there of the different times we've gone, and we believe that there may be a spirit of a young girl there, and there is also a lot of discussion within the team about whether there is only her there or whether there is a second spirit there, potentially as well. And the second spirit that gets talked about, and this is amongst the females in the group, because Natasha in the group doesn't believe there is another spirit. And right. I think there possibly is, because it's what I refer to as the spooky toilet. Right. There is a toilet on the upstairs, and I get a horrible feeling from it. And when you walk up the stairs, it's sort of to your right and over your shoulder. And I like to watch women walk up that stairs, because nearly all of them will turn and look over their shoulder when they walk up the stairs. They know nothing about it. I've said nothing about the spooky toilet or anything, but it's an automatic reaction. When they walk up the other stairwell, they don't turn and look over their shoulder.
Do men ever do that when they walk up there?
Not that I've noticed as much.
Right.
I mean, when I'm there with Mark and Sam and everything, they will now, because there's been lots of talk about the spooky toilet. But I mean, the thing is that that toilet has had things occur to various people over the years, including a man has seen things there as well, not just women. But at first I was just like, I didn't know why. I was just like, that toilet creeps me out. And it's not often anywhere creeps me out. Like, it's a bit of a running gag that my favorite places to go are mental asylums and prisons. Like, I love investigating all those places. And yet there's this one toilet and it creeps me out.
But see, and they're probably places of, like, if we assume that the spirit realm exists, there's probably a lot of energy in those places because of the people that were there. A lot of them would have had big personalities and lots of emotion, and
that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's what draws me to those places, because it's a lot easier to maybe access some of your feelings or whatever, and just feel like you're getting more of an experience there. Because I mean, I'm not a medium, I'm not psychic, I'm not any of those things. Yeah. But I can go in places and go, ooh, I don't like that room, or this is interesting. And I mean, I know the spooky toilet, the more times, because we've been there so many times, I've sat there and I think, I don't want to put my back to that door. I don't want to do it. Why? And I've sat there and we've done experiences where we've put face masks on and sort of blocked your ears and done all these things to try and see what comes up. And the images that come to mind are very much, I feel that it's almost like a male presence, where he's one of those men in life where he's made a lot of bad decisions, he's a bit of a drunk, he's a smoker, his marriage is broken down, and he's really bitter. A lot of people kind of have come across someone like that in life. And it's that kind of feeling of just he likes to make you feel intimidated by him. And I sort of argue that my friend Natasha in the team, she doesn't feel that, because she'll be quite happy with me saying, she's like a 6 foot tall butch lesbian kind of thing. And she's had a life with a lot more experiences than I, and a man like that would just not even faze her at all, and that's the thing. And I think so to her, it's a nothing. It doesn't scare her. It doesn't do anything. Okay. And I think that's part of it, of the openness and experience as well.
So when you talk about that now, so are you thinking that it's actually a spirit of someone, or is it just energy that you're feeling?
I think it's an energy that resides there sometimes, but because it changes when I'm there, I almost think there's a kind of intent sometimes to try and deliberately provoke and make you feel scared.
Right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And when you're saying about people in life, there's people in life like that. I've come across them myself. I understand what you're saying. And hey, maybe as in life we do in death. I mean, it's.
I am very much a strong believer, and my approach is if you are going looking for, say, a spirit or whatever, everybody that you're going searching to try and communicate with was someone's grandparent or brother or sister. And it is exactly like that. There are nice people in life and there are grumpy people, there are whatever. And that's when you die, you don't suddenly change and become an evil spirit.
No, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And I think there's a bit of naivety maybe to the way I approach things, because I always go in with good intent. I always assume that there's not going to be anything bad. Everything's going to be fine. If someone wants to communicate or connect, cool, it'll happen. And it's not very often at all that I ever go anywhere where I do feel scared or whatever. Like you say, you might feel that feeling of, this isn't a nice place.
It's funny because I felt that about situations, but years later. Like, I'll recount this instance to you. Just it's not really paranormal, but it's an interesting thing. I remember being at high school, probably in the mid '80s, and I recall walking home to catch the bus one day, and I never thought about this at the time. I just thought, bugger this, I'm too young to deal with this. I remember these two women accosted me on the side of the road and said, "Hey, look, there's a guy over there in that car, and he's hassling us. Can you go over and see what he wants?" And I'm like, piss off. Tony's behind me. He's a year older than me. Talk to him. And I just kept walking and got on the bus, went home. Tony did the same thing. Years later, it came to me in the middle of the night. I thought, hang on, there's something odd going on there. Why did they want me to go to that car? But it took me like 25 years to figure it out. It's like bizarre. So I don't know whether there was, at the time, I actually had some sort of instinct but wasn't aware of it. And didn't think much about it, and then years later it came on, or what the story was. It just, I know that, as you say, women seem to be a lot more attuned more quickly, as it were, you know what I mean? Like they sort of, And see, that's what I also noticed I watch a few of the different teams on YouTube, like the Ouija Brothers and Ghosts on Kent and stuff, and a lot of the nights they just, in the house, nothing happens. And I sit there and I think, is it because either the people doing it aren't that sensitive, or is it because the spirit or the energy doesn't want to interact with them, or is it maybe them because they're males and maybe the spirit will only talk to a female, or it's just kind of it's. And then I think about myself, as I say, as in life, as in death. I like to have people on and play tricks but you're not going to tell me what to do. Like, you're not going to say, come over here and push this button. Like, I'm going to say, fuck you. Right? so
I mean, thinking, who honestly wants to sit there and answer, are you a man or a woman? Yeah.
I mean, like, if I'm a spirit,
how bold are you?
If I'm a spirit and you're doing that to me, I'm going to have you on. I'm going to play tricks. I'm going to run over there and knock on the wall, then run on the other side of the building and appear and go, yeah,
Yeah.
It is intriguing. but the whole, so we talk about like hearing things and seeing things as well. Like, do you and Natasha and the other girls in the team, do you often hear things that the guys don't, or see things that the guys don't?
When we went to Arrowdale, when we did our big Melbourne trip earlier this year, we were there. There was Kelly, my friend, who she's a bit clairvoyant. She was there with me. She was my driver. And there was Natasha and I, Mark and Sam. And we started out all together in one room, and we were doing a communication session, and the three girls were looking at each other going, there's nothing here. This is the wrong room. This is the wrong room. And we sat there for 10 minutes before we finally said to Mark and Sam, look, no, we're going somewhere else. And we wandered off, and then we spent the rest of the night pretty much a girls group and a guys group. So we weren't really in communication. We came together for, a drink and a bit of pizza, and then went back off and did our own things. At the end of the night, Mark and Sam, we said, what do you got? Nothing. Not much, we'll have to review everything. Whereas we had some really interesting experiences. And so, for example, at one point, we'd all been walking up these corridors and exploring different things. And I turned to see my friend Kelly walk out of a room. But at that moment, when I saw her, it wasn't her, it was a man. For that second. And the man was much taller than her. That's the thing. It was much bigger than her, and then it was her again. And I went, oh my gosh. I just said, oh my gosh, you were a man. And it was like, oh. And that was interesting. And Natasha, if ever you talk to her, she can tell you she had an interesting experience with a doppelganger there as well in the building. And we also did have an experience where Natasha and Kelly had been in the staff quarters, this big 3-story building, and there was only them in there. All the rest of us were in completely different building, and they could hear someone walking around, and the person was like just leading them round and round in circles. They could hear the doors and everything going. And a bit later on, we were in there. We'd been in this staff lounge room, and Natasha and Kelly had left and walked out the room, and we'd been on a balcony. So I just turned back to double check that I had definitely locked this door to the balcony from the room. And I just saw this outline of a woman stood there, and I looked away and went, whoa, look back. She was gone. And I called out for Kelly and said, Kelly. She came in the room, and I said, you'll never guess what? And she goes, oh, you've just seen a woman over your shoulder. And I said, yeah. I said, how do you know that? She goes, oh, because she still stood there. And she pointed to the exact spot that I had seen her. And it was just the outline again of a person. It wasn't anything. It was just my brain recognized there's a woman stood there. That's all it was.
Interesting.
And it was fascinating because, Mark and Sam had gone through that same building and everything. And they were there, and they just weren't getting those experiences.
And see, I had the exact opposite, interestingly, at the Globe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's the only time I've ever seen anything. Now, at the end of the show, you'd be in the lighting box and you're shutting everything down for the night, and generally people would mill around in the bloody auditorium and wait for their friends in the cast or whatever, and you're thinking, I want to turn the house lights off, worker lights on. And my wife was the front house manager, and she was going through up the stairs, up the seats, cleaning up, picking up any rubbish that was left in there. Anyway, this one night, there's a particular seat on the end of the front row on the left, which is normally left empty because, it's in a shitty position, but also anyone who accompanies a wheelchair would sit there. Normally no one sits in that seat. Now, during the show, I looked down there. There was definitely no one sitting in that seat during the show because it's not allocated. They're not there. The end of the show, I'm going through my shutdown routine. I look up, and there's an old chap with a hat on sitting in this bloody seat, and I'm going, Christ, I've got to wait for him to go before I put the work lights on, blah, blah, blah. Leanne's coming up through the audience doing the tidy up, So I turn around, do something else. I turn back, he's gone. Okay, cool, can switch it over. In the car on the way home, I said to her, what a pain in the arse that guy was sitting in the front row. And she goes, what guy are you talking about? I said, the guy that was sitting in that seat on the end. I said, that's why I didn't turn the worker lights on. Oh, she said, there was no one sitting there, no one allocated there. I said, no, definitely at the end of the show there was someone sitting there. And she said, oh, I didn't see anyone. And then I just thought, well, maybe it's just, someone had come in, had been in another seat, and they'd gone and sat there waiting for whoever they were waiting for out of the cast, which is entirely possible, right? And by the time I looked up, they walked out and gone. So I thought nothing more of it. A few days later, I'm standing in the foyer, and in the foyer of the theatre, there's a painting, a self-portrait of Frank, the caretaker, wearing glasses and a hat. And the hat looked, and I'm sitting there going, Leanne, that was the guy that I saw from behind sitting in that seat. And she's going, oh, no. Well, later on down the track, a year or two later, that same seat, we were doing a tidy up one day. We tidied the venue up and walked backstage to do some stuff. And the seats were always up. We always put them up at the end of the show. We came back in and the seat was down. Okay, that's weird. So we put the seat up, go back in, come back out, it's down again. Now, it's incredibly hard to push down. Because when Mark and Sam and the guys come through, we worked on it. It was very stiff. But that was the same seat. So we're sitting there going, oh, I wonder if that was Frank sitting watching the stage crew pack up at the end of the day. But it was interesting. It was a complete contrast to what you said, is that the females that were in the place didn't see anything, but I did.
And that's it. It's, did he want to be seen by you?
Yeah, well, because I spent a lot of time in the place, and I would always walk in, and being open-minded, I'd just say, morning, Frank, or evening, Frank. It's just me. I'm doing my shit, and I'm walking around. And so, it was like maybe that was it. But here's the intriguing part about when I left. The very last night of the last show I did there in September, I downloaded that Ghost Tube app just for a laugh. I thought, I'll just, I went upstairs on my own, knowing that that's where, and I sat there and I sort of said, hey, Frank, it's my second to last night. I'm out of here tomorrow after 10 years. I've done my time, blah, 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 whatever. And I've just had a knee operation. I had a knee operation in November, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm talking away and I'm saying, so, look after the place, blah, blah, blah. And it came up, it said, injured. Yes, I'm injured. And it said something like, I haven't got it in front of me now, but like, painful. Yeah. And then it was like, then it came up and said lonely. And then goodbye. And I was like, what the hell? And I'm like, this is weird. I've never, and so whether or not, I don't know. It was strange. Never said his name, but it was like almost like if there was something there, it was saying to me, hey, yeah, you're injured, and that was part of the reason why I was leaving, because I couldn't go up and down the ladders anymore, And whether or not it knew I was injured and it was saying, okay, I'm going to be lonely, goodbye, because I spent a hell of a lot of time in the place. But when I left, there's been a changing of the guard, and there's been some people that have come in that are, it's a long story. It's they're different types of people. And I felt as they'd come in over the year that the energy in the place had changed. I used to walk in and I used to think, yep, I can feel a presence here, and I know I'm safe because I'm just doing what I'm doing, up the ladder, whatever, working on some electrics, whatever I'm doing. Frank's watching the place. He was a caretaker in life. He's a caretaker in death. That's all good, right? That's what it...
Yeah.
But when these people sort of came in beginning of the year, it kind of felt like he was no longer there, or he was no longer watching. And I was like, this is odd. So I bizarre feeling, but just the total opposite to what you were saying. And that's what I'm interested in. I've never seen anything. I've never talked to anyone who'd seen anything until the night I leave. There was two women that have just recently arrived, and this I don't buy, because I don't believe that this would have occurred. But we got talking about the ghost app and the ghost of the place, because they're fairly new to the place and that. And apparently during the rehearsals of this show, which was weeks before this Ghost Tube was talking to me or whatever, they claim under the bright white LED lights that we had, which saturates the stage in the place when there's no one in there, and when they're rehearsing, they claim they were sitting in the seats and he appeared to them solid on the stage. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I've been here 10 years and no one's really seen him. And my sighting, right, I still put it down to possibly somebody sitting in that seat waiting for somebody, and they left when I looked up again. I'm not guaranteeing it was him, but I just found it odd that suddenly these new people, within the space of 3 weeks, were sighting him all the time.
Yeah. I think there's that element of, I call it I call it the specials.
Yeah.
There are people who hear things and they want so desperately to be special and to see things that they will see things.
Yeah. I mean, because and as I say, I was there 10, nearly 11 years, and there was often noises. It was a 160-year-old bloody building. So it could have just been the building moved. And I would just say hello, goodbye to Frank, just in case,
Yeah.
he was here or not. But
it's
that
polite.
Yeah, exactly. But that weird thing with the ghost app at the my second to last night, I thought, why would this app say injured? Why indeed? This is Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. Be right back with Aimee. First, though, a bit of a song break. Auckland band Sonic Alter, Ghost in the Mirror.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
It's me, the Roadie. I'm here with Aimee from Paranormal New Zealand. Do women see things more often than men, do you think, when you've been on investigations or not?
I don't know, because I've not seen, like, this is the first year that I've really truly seen, like, I've seen bits and pieces over the years, like I've seen doors opening and closing and things like that.
That's cool. Really?
Yeah. And I lived in a house that I will strongly say was haunted. And the way I knew it was haunted was one morning I'd sort of woken up and it was a little bit light in the room and I was just laid there looking and my door started to open all the way back real slowly, and I thought, oh, that's weird. So I literally got my phone and I turned the light on and pointed it at the door to look properly at the door, and it opened all the way wide, all the way back, and I was watching it, and then it moved to close and closed its way all the way back.
Whoa.
So really, really, really slowly.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time I'm like looking at myself going, am I awake? This is real, you know? And it was. And it was just the first time I thought, oh, that's a bit weird. And I ended up trying to see, could I find the history of the house?
Yeah.
Because I'm into genealogy and that sort of stuff, but you're starting with a person, not a house.
That's right.
And so I actually put it on the local pages and I said, look, you know, I'm used to doing genealogy. How would you find out who lived in a house if you only know the house sort of thing? Where can you go without breaching people's privacy? And all people came up with bits and pieces of suggestions. And one lady had actually said, oh, look, you know, you're going to think I'm a bit crazy, but I don't want anything. I would really like to talk to you about your house. And I'm like, okay, you do sound a bit crazy. But so I agreed to meet her outside my house because I didn't want any crazies in my house. And I met this lady. Her name was Susan. She was not a crazy. She's a lovely, lovely lady. And she came in, she stood and she said, oh, I just want to, you know, she said she is psychic, but she felt she needed to talk to me. And she stood looking at my house and she's going, it's so weird. And I'm going, what? Because your house is showing me that it's got 2 stories, but your house doesn't have 2 stories. It's a single story bungalow. It's very weird. And I'm like, okay, cool. So anyway, then she told me about, she said, look, you know, I know why your door was opening. I just want to tell you. And so she said, there's a lady that comes and she said she walks from your kitchen down the hallway. She checks on your daughter and then she comes and she checks on you. And then she turns around, goes up the stairs and goes to her room. This is a woman who's not even been in my house. Right? And I'm going, okay, cool. So I did let her in and we had a coffee and we had a chat and all these things anyway. And I thought, but there is no upstairs to my house. This is weird. Anyway, so I went on, kept researching, decided to join the local museum so I could, when I wasn't showing people around, do my own research. One of the ladies that actually was the curator there at the time, turns out, talking to her, her father had lived next door to my house. She grew up next to my house. And what do you know? It used to have an upstairs. It used to have a big attic room. And so the more we looked into it, we don't know who this person is, but there seems to be a belief that our house was once connected to the local pub. It had been part of the local pub and part of it had been moved to our site. And that this woman, whoever she was, the message was she came and she checked on my daughter and then she came in and checked on us and then she went upstairs to her room. But she would never go into the kitchen area. And it turns out the reason she wouldn't go into that kitchen area was that never used to exist, one. And also we think it's because when that kitchen renovation was done and extended the house, that's why they took the second story down, because they lowered and widened the roof. So they actually removed the upstairs. But it was a house that had the most lovely feeling. You felt so safe, so warm, so looked after and protected. Everybody who went there loved that house. And so I would sit there and I would see little things out the corner of my eye when you're in the lounge and things like that. And I would do similar to you. I would sit and talk to her. And I would just talk to her and, you know, I got the name Clara in my head. I don't know where that came from. And I just go, oh, don't know if your name's Clara, but how are you doing today? I've had a good day or whatever. When I left, I actually explained to her, I sat in my room and explained, I'm sorry, we're leaving.
Well, that's exactly what I did to Frank. I'm leaving. Yeah.
But I said to her, I know, it's so ridiculous. I said, I know that, you're here because of the house, but if you want to come with us, you can. And I said, but we're building a house, so it might be a while.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting.
So,
and I actually discovered later on that there had actually been a lady called Clara had lived in the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, now that's interesting. Now I've talked with Mark about this and Sam as well. Now, what do you think? See, this is what I've begun to think this, right? Is it, how do you say it? Almost like another dimension. Like, to me, are they living in like they've passed or whatever, or it's another universe, another dimension, in exactly the same spot, in exactly the same time. So they're sitting in their lounge, walking around, doing whatever they do. You know what I mean? And like how do we see or hear them? Do they see or hear us the same way?
It's like the movie The Others, isn't it?
Well,
it's
yeah.
like, are we actually the ghosts to them?
Bingo. It's kind of like, like I was watching one of I think it was Ghost on Trent. They went to this old house, and it was like everything was still in the house, and it was almost like, and they were in a particular lounge room, and I'm looking at this lounge room, and I'm going, they've somehow Paul found out that the guy who'd lived there had passed away at a particular year, and there was some noises and stuff in that room, and I'm sitting there thinking, now, is that dude sitting in his armchair, right? and like, he's thinking that he's like, when he's died in 1992, to him, is it still 1992 in that house? So with Clara, is it whatever year she passed in that house? And she's still going upstairs because in her dimension, there's still an upstairs. You see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
And
in actual fact, she's not maybe even checking in on us.
No.
She's checking in on her kids in that room.
Bingo.
And it's almost like a timestamp of
That's
something
right.
like your stone tape theory.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. It's because I do wonder that. I do wonder. See, it's like, for example, with, I know his name was Frank because we know he was a member of the club. So he was a live-in caretaker. So when he passed away in the 80s, I always said Frank's here and he's the caretaker. He's looking after the place. Is he just going about his business every day, doing what he does, looking after the place? But to him, it's 1986 still.
It makes you wonder, though,
Yeah.
in 50 years, could I be, as a spirit, going to work? God, that would be depressing.
Well, that's what I mean, isn't it? Isn't it? That's kind of, it's kind of intriguing, the whole thing. And then you wonder if it's just an energy pattern thing, because you see, this is what the ones that I really get frustrated with are the ones that are claiming to be communicating with someone, and they're talking to Eddie Van Halen or whoever the hell it is that's passed, and I'm sitting there thinking, hang on. So all the millions of people that have passed, right? People like Art Bell, people like Harry Houdini, all these people who were Aleister Crowley, who were into that sort of stuff. Like, I know Art Bell, the radio host, actually said on one of his shows, because I listened to his old shows, that if he gets to the other side and he's got a way of communicating, he's going to come back. Now, Art Bell would be communicating with us directly if he could do it, wouldn't he? He wouldn't.
Yeah.
So are we actually getting direct communications with intelligence, as it were, like intentional, or is it just energy patterns?
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a chance that Art Bell could be having a bit of fun, and he actually is coming across as the demon that is possessing Zach Baggins, I suppose. But
now that would be classic, wouldn't it? That would be classic, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I've told my daughter straight out. I said, look, if I die before you're married and have kids, I'm sorry, but I will have ghost FOMO and I will be haunting you.
Yeah.
I will be coming back and I will be watching all the things that I really wanted to stay for.
That's, of course, if you're able to, yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's a thing about that energy too, because because I grew up originally in England until I was 13, and then I came to New Zealand. And growing up, you always used to hear lots of stories about ghost Romans and things walking, and they would be like walking, and you could only just see from the knees up because they're walking on a Roman road that's much lower than the current road, and all these kind of stories. Nowadays, you don't really hear about the ghost Romans or any of that sort of stuff anymore. It's always the Victorians, the people from the 1950s. It's a certain thing. And I do wonder if there's that element of you've got energy, but over time that energy dissipates.
I was just going to say that. Yes. Does it dissipate over time? Yeah.
And I mean, that answers those people that always say, well, why are there no ghost dinosaurs? And all that kind of thing as well, because I wonder if the energy, I mean, always energy just constantly changes from one type to another. So if we are actually using that energy to manifest in a way that, eventually it is going to dissipate, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And that may explain why when you watch these teams on YouTube, a team will go to a house and it'll get a whole lot of activity. Another team will go get activity. The third guy's come along and there's nothing, or it's very weak. Now, is that because the whole thing is just it's weird, eh?
Yeah, I mean that would explain why you've got like the Black Monk of Pontefract and East Street and all that sort of stuff, where people were going and they were getting things, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. Why you've got all these paranormal, amazing, the Enfield haunting. You've got these people who will swear black and blue that they were there and they saw this. And yet all these people go to the Enfield house and they get absolutely diddly squat. Nothing. No readings on anything. Nothing.
It's weird, eh? It's really weird. But what do you... I mean, I'm kind of a bit like you. I get feelings on things. I get intuition. I kind of believe that's a thing. But when it comes to psychics, particularly these ones that will stand in a room and tell you they're directly talking to someone, I'm a bit skeptical on that. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of cold and hot reading going on when you look at a lot of those shows, anything that's on TV. I don't believe it.
No.
There are certain psychics that they bring onto TV shows quite a lot, and I look at them and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's always, there's somebody whose name begins with E, and you're just like, or you get your situation like what was his name, Derek Akora. Even back then when I used to watch it on Most Haunted, I would be looking going, he's so sure about his dates and his names, and every time it would come up was no evidence of this person was here, no evidence of that, and you just think, is it just that they're so confident in what they're saying that people truly will buy into it and make it fit?
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen Darren Brown. You will have done.
Oh, yes.
Now, I watched him one day with, I don't know if you ever saw the Spiritualist Church one that he did. He set himself up. He set himself up in the UK, right, as a claiming to be a medium, and he contacted this lady who was the head of the Spiritualist Church in America, and he said, "I'm coming to the United States, and I'm going to go on through, and I would like to come around to some of your churches and stuff." And she was into that. Now he went through and he showed how a lot of them will do these cold readings, and I'll go, he did it in the studio. I've got a man coming through. He's elderly, and you can read people's body language, and you can see him. Is it a father? Is it an uncle? And you can see how he's doing it, right? He's fishing. Yeah. He's getting it done. Well, he went to the Spiritualist Church in America, and he completely bamboozled them, right? And at the end of it, they showed the woman who was the head of the Spiritualist Church going, "I've never met someone so psychic. It's incredible." And yet he showed us all how he could do it.
Yeah. It's amazing psychology. And I think that's part of it as well. I mean, one of my favorite books that I've ever read is Paranormality by Richard Wiseman.
Yeah.
And he sits and he explains how your brain works. And he explains that ideomotor effect and basically says that, Ouija boards are bunk.
I think they are.
It's the people whose hands are on the planchette.
That's what I say.
And they don't know it's them.
No.
But they so desperately want it to move that their brain is fooling them and making it move.
I agree. Because I once there was a couple of girls once in a theatre group I was in Christchurch in the 80s and 90s doing this. And I sat there one day and I said, okay, I want you to prove to me that's real. Oh, it is real. I said, okay, take your hands off the planchette. I want the ghost to move the planchette without your hands being on it. Oh, no, our hands have to be on it. Why do your hands have to be on it? If it's going to communicate with me, can't it do it without...
No, because they'll say the energy has to channel through us. It has to use our energy.
Yeah,
we have to be touching it.
I know.
But it's very easy to teach people, like to sort of show them, because what you do is you get them doing Ouija board and it will start to communicate whatever. Then you ask them to then put a blindfold on.
Yeah.
And then you spin the board.
Mm.
And then you ask them to keep going. And everything suddenly becomes complete gobbledygook after that. And it's the same, I'm really interested in dowsing rods.
Yeah.
Because they can seem incredibly accurate until you put a blindfold on. And suddenly, like, you can ask them to point out certain features in a room. So can you turn and point to the man in the room? Can you point, that sort of thing? And it works. If you put a blindfold on a person and then ask the same thing, it doesn't work.
Do you think those dowsing rods work in terms of when they're looking for things like water or something, or is that the same thing?
Yeah. See, that's fascinating to me, because I sort of think, I wonder, it would be really interesting to get someone who's really good at finding water to then do it blindfolded.
Yeah.
I'd love to know if it works the same way.
Because it could be that could be legit with, like, say, energy, like energy from water or something is doing that. You know? Yeah.
But in terms of spirit communication, and the other thing is, when we do our public events, I would say 95% of the times when you put the dowsing rods into someone's hands, it is going to be one of their relatives comes through.
Yeah.
And that's because they desperately want it to be their relatives coming through, their mum, their dad, their nan, whatever. They want it to be that. So that is, whether they understand it or not, they may be able to control those rods to cross or open or whatever the signal is that has occurred for yes, to make it occur. So, and it's the same with whether you're doing a dowsing chain on a string or anything else. I just think it's really interesting the way the brain works.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
Christchurch band Pieces of Molly and Spirit Man here on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie, chatting with Aimee from Paranormal New Zealand. Being I'm a lighting guy, but I've got a radio background as well. Ham radio studio here. That I don't buy these ones that come out with a little radio and they sit there and they say, if I scan backwards through the bands, the spirits will talk to me. Now, when I was a young fella, before the internet, I learned about the world listening to the shortwave, right? Radio Moscow, BBC World, all that. And I had a radio there that I could scan backwards. And you know what it did when it scanned backwards? All it did was pick up stations going backwards, right? It didn't pick anything else up. Now, I'm not convinced that, it was the other night I was watching the Ghosts on Trend and they said, we've detuned it. And I'm going, you can't. All you're doing is taking stuff out of the memory. You're not detuning the radio. It's still scanning backwards through the broadcast band. I don't. Well, what do you think of that? I'm just not convinced about that with the ghost communication, because I still think a lot of it can just be radio broadcast popping up.
Yeah, I believe so, and it's like when you get those people who look at a picture and they see a face and it's not. It's pixelated pareidolia. It's right. Your brain as a baby is psychologically trained to look for faces to help you survive and find your parents. It continues in life in photos. I believe that when people are using that, it's auditory pareidolia. Yeah. You are trying to hear words that you recognize. Yeah. The static and the little excerpts of that's coming from
that's
the radio.
Right. And a lot of it is only one word at a time. And like, I'm a guy that likes to talk. There's bound to be people like me that have passed on that aren't going to go one word at a time. They're going to blurb a sentence out to you, right?
And it is fascinating. We were on Norfolk Island doing an investigation over there, and on Norfolk Island there is almost no radio signals of any kind. So it was fun because we borrowed someone's radio and set it sweeping, and we got a couple of little random things, but we actually started hearing what we believe was signals from a Russian ship.
Well, it could be.
It was counting numbers and things in Russian, and was like,
that's a legit station. I can tell you about that. Because in the 80s, right, I picked that up on my shortwave. Now, it was actually a station. I can't remember what it's called, but you can find this on the web. It was it started off. It was during the Soviet era, right? The station, and what it was is it would be a female voice and a male voice, and they'd say numbers and words in English and in Russian. Okay, and what someone's figured out. I don't know if it's intelligence services in the West have figured it out or something, but it was sending coded messages to spies around the world via shortwave by saying, 268 banana rock, blah blah blah, right? And that's what it was doing in both languages. Well, apparently that station, and they think it might have been automated, but that station went on and it may still be going on, several years after the Soviet Union fell, because it's in the middle of bloody Siberia somewhere.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that still exists or whether it's the current Russians using it. But during the Soviet era, because you could pick it up here in New Zealand, where I lived in Christchurch, I had a big long aerial on my fence for my shortwave. And this bloody thing, you could get it, and it would, and you'd be sitting there going, "There's a woman reading numbers out. It makes no sense." And that's what it was. It was a Soviet era communication with spies around the world. At a certain time of the day, the agents knew to tune into that thing and get their instructions.
Oh, that's quite exciting if we accidentally stumbled on that then.
So whether or not the Russians still use that now, I don't know. But I know that went, the thing I was reading about a few years ago, it went on about I know that station was running 3 or 4 years after the Soviet Union fell. Now, they think it might have been automated then, but I can't imagine it's still running now in that original format. So it might just be something that the current Russian services do, but that's what they were doing. Yeah, it was interesting. Very interesting.
Well, it certainly wasn't letting us talk to any prisoners who'd been working in the crank house, that's for sure. No. So, but, and I mean, I think it ties into some of your other phone apps that do a similar sort of thing. That's right.
I used the Ghost Tube, but it was with a grain of salt. What am I going to get? This is curious that the answers came out, reasonably similar, but then I'm thinking later on, is the phone app listening to me and knows I've got a bung knee because I've talked about it to people and throw shit out like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's intriguing.
I mean, we've done lots of. Generally, our opinion is they're all bunkum.
Yeah.
But there's one that I still really like, and I'm still playing with it, and that's the Portal.
Okay.
And the Portal is one where it's got sort of different voice actors, like male, female, child, etc. And they've recorded words and chunked them up and play them forwards and backwards. So they're just chunks of words rather than whole words. And they play, and often it just sounds like someone speaking foreign language or gobbledygook or whatever. And they're all playing over the top of each other. But then is
it? Because you see, this is where a lot of the TV shows and even the YouTube channels fall down, especially the English YouTube channels, right? Because you think of the history of Britain and England, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. English in Shakespearean time was different to now, and going back to Saxon time was different, right? So if you're standing in a castle and you're going, go over there and touch the aerial on that box, and let's just presume for a minute that the spirit world exists and there's a ghost there, he's going, one, what are you talking about? And if he does kind of understand you, he's going, what the fuck's an aerial? Right? You know what I mean?
The real funny thing is, there's an app called Spirit Talker.
Yeah.
And Spirit Talker I've used in quite a few different countries, and the main thing I always make sure I do is I turn off my put my phone onto airplane mode long before I get to the location that I'm going to. Right? So it can't be searching GPS and all that sort of stuff. So when I was in Australia in Geelong jail, I turned on the Spirit Talker and I'm walking around, and Spirit Talker will give you words and sentences and everything.
Yeah.
And walking along some of the gangways, it would say, come in here, we're in here. Or watch out, he's a bad man. Or these kind of things, which could align with prisons.
Yep.
And I went, okay, fine. Went home, just left it running with no questions asked or anything, just left it, and I left the room. Came back and got absolute gobbledygook, like nothing even vaguely making sense. When I was in the UK, though, I was in a castle, I can't even think which one it was, and my cousin's daughter, who was interested, and I said, here you go, have a play with this, blah blah blah. We were asking some questions, and some of the answers seemed to be answering some of those questions, and I was, that's a bit weird. And right at the end, we said, okay, we're going to go now because they're going to kick us out, and it said, good morrow to you ladies.
Weird.
And I thought, that's a bit unusual, you know, because and it's like what you say. Never since I've used it all in a couple of different places, I've put it back in my house and tried using it in my house and things like that. It's never come up with any language like that oldie worldy English. So it's fascinating. But
and that's what people forget.
Yeah.
That the language changed, or even in terms of immigrants, you know, like even in New Zealand, if you're talking to a spirit from the 1800s, right?
Yeah.
They may not even sound like us. And see, this is what got me thinking about this. I was going to talk to you about EVPs in a minute because you hear voices so often, right? I watched an old video on YouTube a couple of years ago. It was a Civil War parade, and it had the last veterans of the American Civil War. It was the early 1900s, 1920s, maybe, this video, right?
Yeah.
Confederate Union together. They talked to a couple of these guys, and I'm going, my God, that guy sounds Irish, and that one there has kind of a bit of a Yorkshire tinge to himself. And then I thought, no, that makes sense, because there was a lot of immigrants in America at that time.
Fresh off the boat.
Yeah, and they did fight, and there was a lot of Irish fought in the armies over there. I'm then watching something about Gettysburg or something, and there's these, I've got these EVP. Oh, it was one of these bloody TV shows. Got these EVPs from the soldiers, and they all sound like Yanks. And I'm sitting there going, do they really? Wouldn't they have more of an accent like that old chap did in 1920?
Well, it's like when you see some of the documentaries at sort of Povea Island, you know, in Venice.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're Italian. Why are they likely to be talking to you in English?
Bingo. That's exactly it. They're not, are they?
No.
No. But you see, getting onto EVPs, and I'll ask you more about that in a minute. If there was another one I heard on the Art Bell show one time. There's this guy in LA, and he's in this mausoleum, and he reckoned he was getting all these voices in this mausoleum, and you could hear these voices vaguely in the background. And I'm thinking, well, hang on, you're talking about these tombs that you're in are from the early 20th century America, and here's an accent, and God damn it, it sounds like an American accent. And I'm like, really? Did they really sound like that in California, Hollywood? Because Hollywood was very Jewish and Irish, a lot of people in the early days there. In fact, the silent movies, there was Romanians and all that were in the movies because they had, circus performers. So I'm thinking, really? Would they really have that American Californian twang? That's where I want to go now. EVPs, dear. I've never really. I tried capturing a couple at the Globe one time, and it was a little bit like you were saying about the pareidolia. There was some noise on, and it was just a standard little dictaphone thing I've got, right? There was noise on there that if I really tried hard enough, I could say that's someone saying something, right?
Yeah.
But then when myself and the sound technician, who was my daughter, sat there and we both listened to it separately, we both came up with a different word.
Yeah.
Now, and then Jamie turned around to me and she said, if that's Frank, why is he only saying one word to us? Wouldn't he say a sentence? Bingo, you see? Yeah, exactly, But have you guys ever, or have you personally ever tried the EVP thing, and have you had anything compelling that's,
Always. Everywhere we go, I've got a voice recorder going.
Yeah.
Even if you cameras, you got everything, I've got the voice recorder. So, just in case. And we've got a few things, like there's one from King Seat.
Yeah.
And King Seat's really fascinating because we haven't got a huge amount of actual evidence from King Seat.
Right.
And we have a bit of a theory that it's because when you go in with all your whiz-bang flashy lights and bits and pieces, for people that were in a place like King Seat who were having various treatments that might be electrotherapy or other things as well, if someone comes to you and says, can you touch this to make it light up, are you very likely to do that?
Of course not.
No. And so anything with lights and things like that and aerials and bits and pieces, it would be quite scary. So you're not going to go near it. And so we were in what was sort of an upstairs day room, and we were trying to do a communication session, and we'd got video cameras on, and we'd also got my little voice recorder, and we kept hearing this noise. And so Sam walked up a corridor towards some doors, which was the patient's rooms, and it had those great big heavy massive doors on them. However, not every room had a door. Okay. And he went up and he said, no, it's okay, you can come and talk to us, something along those lines. You can come out and talk to us.
Right.
And nothing really happened. That was it, blah, blah, blah. But when we actually played it back, I checked my voice recorder first. And when he said that, there's a bit of a wait of maybe about 15, 20 seconds. And then you hear very clearly on my voice recorder a little voice say, come on out. And then another voice says, no. And it's very clear. And so we went, okay, let's just check that. So we checked Natasha's video camera that was also running, which also picked up the same voice.
Right.
But none of us had heard it at the time. There were 4 of us in the room. None of us heard it, and we were all in different locations in the room.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And we went back to the room. We tried to see if we could recreate it. We tried to see if we could get any other response. Nothing.
Yeah, see, that could... Again, I'm inclined to actually put more credence in that than the silly radio thing, scanning through the radio band, because to me there's variables in the radio thing, right? But if we go back to just a pattern of energy going or something being repeated, right? You happen to just record something at that time and in that place or whatever, legitimately. And it might just a fluke that what they were saying coincided with what Sam said, perhaps. But I'm inclined to believe that, because occasionally I've been everywhere. I've been outside. I've been anywhere, and occasionally you think you hear a voice. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not in your head. You just think, it could well be that the other realm, someone is talking or whatever, and they just happen to be walking along. I've had it in the street. I don't drink or anything, right? I never have. And I've walked down the street. I remember particularly in the 90s, when I was living in Christchurch, I'd often walk home across the city. It's in the days when you could do that because the city was pretty safe. And I'd walk home from the theatre or whatever, and you'd be walking along, and it was like you'd kind of get the impression that someone was walking past you having a conversation. And you go, shit, there's no one there. What? And so that kind of fascinates me because I think there's more to that sometimes than the radio thing. The ones that I do have doubts about are these ones where, like you say, they're in a place that logically they're not going to speak English.
Yeah.
But they pick up an English voice, or it's 1880s America and they're talking in an American accent. You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
Because that's the thing, like, I mean, one of the places I'd love to go is the old Changi Hospital in Singapore.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's just like, it would be probably quite pointless me doing that, because even if I got evidence, I wouldn't recognize it.
Well, that's right, exactly.
It's going to be probably in Japanese or something else, and it's just, you know, you sort of think about it and you think, you could catch the most amazing thing and you wouldn't even know you've got it.
That's exactly it. It's be like the UK, like Haunted Scotland and all that sort of thing, right? You watch them and they're getting things, and I'm thinking, hang on, these castles, you're going back to sort of 1100, 1200 in Scotland. They were speaking quite a different language back then. They weren't speaking English.
They would have been speaking French and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, exactly, because of the Normans. That's what people forget. They go to these places and they're standing there, I'm in this castle, blah, blah, blah. They forget that, like Richard the Lionheart, who's a particular fascinating character that I've studied in history, he spoke French. He didn't speak a word of English. And there was a lot of people in this court that were the same. So, you know,
I mean, even within New Zealand, when we go to places, I mean, it's very rudimentary, but we do try and say, you know, try and speak some te reo.
Well, that's right. That's what I said the same. Yeah.
Just because there's a house there now doesn't mean that there weren't the actual ancestral peoples on that land.
Well, that's exactly it. And I said that to Sam. I said, look, you know, that's the thing, is that the spiritual part of this land, right, goes way back pre-European. And if you assume that, and you say that the spirit world exists, there will be spirits here of Maori. Perhaps there was someone here before Maori, or at the same time as Maori. Their spirits will be here. The Chinese supposedly came down here. Their spirits could be here. The French, you know, so like you can't just assume that everyone's going to speak in English. And this is what I've seen with some of these American shows too, where they say, oh, we're on an old Indian burial ground. And I've watched one day, this medium's walking around, I'm on an Indian burial ground and they're talking to me in my head in English, and I'm going, really? Really? It's a Mohican burial ground. They probably were speaking to you in bloody Mohican. I mean, it is quite fascinating. Yeah. But with the EVP thing, do you find that the women sometimes have more success with picking the voices up than the men, or is it?
It does seem Natasha is the best at it.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Yeah. But she's got that really technical ear. She's an engineer and, you know, all those sorts of things. And she hears these things and then she'll go back and she'll really listen to it and play it over and over and edit it if needs be to clear it up. Right. I'm not so good because I actually have a bit of auditory processing disorder, so I'll sometimes hear things and go, "Oh, did it say that?" And she'll go, "No."
Yeah,
I'm not what it said, Aimee.
I've got tinnitus in one ear from my years of doing rock and roll lighting, and I had this sound man that I used to work with who would refuse to wear the intercoms. Absolutely refuse. And so I'll be talking to follow spots, and he'd insist at yelling at me in my left ear. So I got to the point where I just kept that can off my ear. Yeah. And now years later, I've got tinnitus in my ear, and I'll hear things sometimes, and people will go, no, that's not because of the tinnitus, you know.
I do quite like, if I think, I'm like, oh, there's something there, I'm not quite sure, I will actually run it past my daughter, because she's like 12 going on 13. Right. And there's a certain element of, you know, at that age, they haven't blown their ears out completely either. And they can kind of hear different frequencies that I can't hear anymore as well. Because you sort of think about that too. It's like there may be that whole idea of infrasound and all that sort of stuff could be going on there, linked into those feelings of, oh, I want to go into that place or I don't. And actually there may be sounds that you're feeling but you can't hear. That's right. As well. And so she has no concept or any of that bias of where that EVP came from or what happened beforehand or anything. She is literally listening for something that may be there. See, that's it.
That's interesting. Because
Yeah.
I'm a big Star Trek fan, and there was an episode of the original series, where they were on the bridge of the Enterprise, and what was happening is these aliens were taking the ship over, and they couldn't tell. All they could hear was this whistling noise, shh, and it turned out that these aliens were moving at a different frequency, resonating at a different frequency to us, and so when they moved around the bridge, all they could hear was this shh, and they had to. It's sci-fi. They did something to somebody's metabolism to speed them up so they could interact with them. You think, I wonder if that's what's happening. You're hearing a shh, and it's actually them. And like you say, your daughter can hear different frequencies. I also wonder if it's to do with personality as well. Like if the person's personality is a bit more open to it, or, if they're a reserved person, does an EVP come through, or I'm not sure. It's certainly an interesting thing. Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie, chatting with Aimee from Paranormal New Zealand. Be right back after this song from New Zealand band Sandtrap and Apophenia. Look the word up and see what it means, and you'll see how it fits into the show.
Every time
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
But with your daughter, when you've taken her on investigations, have you used things like EVPs or like the radio?
So she's my little Estes method guinea pig.
I saw that the other day on the Ouija brothers, that Estes method, right? Sam said to me,
Yeah.
go and look at that, because I was trashing this radio thing. And I have to say, and I'm assuming, of course, because I'm only watching it on YouTube, and I'm taking it that it's real. I have to say, because it was the Ouija brothers, and I think it was that guy and girl that invented the ghost tube thing, Aimee and something.
Aimee's crypt.
Yeah, Amy's crypt. They were asking spirit things that Griff was actually bloody directly answering. Now, if he legitimately couldn't hear them, the words he was blurting out, I was like, whoa, this is interesting, right? So Sam said to me, go look at that, you might be convinced. I'm going, I'm still not convinced because it's radio, but, interesting. Yeah, so your daughter's done that as well.
If I was there watching it in real time, then I would be more convinced, because, with editing, they edit out the 40 misses and only put the 4 hits. But I, with my daughter, that's exactly what we do. We put her in noise-cancelling headphones, playing the Portal app incredibly loud.
Right, so she can't hear anything.
She can hear the faintest of mumbles, but she can't hear what you're saying.
Right.
And so we did this. We've done it a couple of times now with her, and so I will make sure I drop my voice really low as well when I'm asking. I'm very quiet. Sometimes I'm actually outside of the room, asking the question. And what we do is, because that's the one where it's got the 3 different voice people, I will say to her, right, the random word I want you to listen for is, say, cat. And then she'll put the headphones on, she starts listening for cat. And I will then speak to the room and say, okay, can you please indicate to her which voice to listen to by saying the word cat? And so she's listening. When she hears the word cat, she gives me the thumbs up, and then I know I can start asking questions. And she just listens to whichever voice she believes she's heard the word cat. And she just starts saying anything that voice says out loud. She's just repeating.
Has any of it made sense for you in terms of the conversation?
Yep. And it's quite surprising. So we were doing a public event, and she was saying these words, and you could see her, because she wears a mask as well, so she can't see anything, any of the reactions of what she's saying or anything. And we were asking questions if anyone was there, and various things were coming through, and then all of a sudden she said this person's name, and one of the people in the room sort of gasped. And anyway, we carried on, and we said, okay, how old are you, so we know who you are? And she came back with this name, and the person sort of gasped and went, oh my gosh, I've got to go, I've got to leave the room. And their friend said, that was this person's sister, and she passed away. And it kept on going. And the person sort of eventually came back in the room, and Kaya had been saying other things about, whatever else. And then we sort of said, where are you? Can you see us?
Yeah, that's what I love more paranormal teams to actually ask.
Yeah. The funny thing is, though, Kaya, she sort of frowned, and she went, I'm in the shower. And you could see her go, this is just absolute rubbish. and all this sort of thing. And this person just burst into tears and ran out the room again. And this person's sister had died in the shower.
Oh, right. Okay.
And some other bits and pieces. And then at the end of the night, she said, Mum, it was because this was the first time she'd done it. She said, this was really hard because I could hear them talking Spanish, but I don't know enough Spanish to say it out loud, and I didn't want to sound really dumb. And anyway, so I went back to that person and I said, look, this is going to sound dumb, but do you speak Spanish? And he said, no, I don't. Okay, fine, never mind. And a few days later he came back and he said, I didn't know this. I went and asked around, and he said that his sister, who had passed away, had been learning Spanish with her daughter.
Oh, okay.
And it correlated roughly when we watched the video back to when you see Kaya sort of say, that was the point they started speaking Spanish to me. It was when we had said, do you have any messages for anyone? And so this possibly had been coming through in Spanish, the message, and it wasn't for him, it was for the daughter.
Oh, okay.
maybe.
Yeah, okay.
But we've had other things that Kaya has done. So we were at the pump house, and it came through, and the person's name was Sid. And we asked,
Okay.
"How old are you, Sid?" And Sid said, "I'm 8 years old."
Oh, okay.
Right? Blah blah blah. Whatever else.
Yeah.
And there was some really interesting things. Like it was like, "Oh, what do you like to play with, Sid?" And it came back, "I like Happy Meal toys."
Whoa! So he's not that old then. Not he
No,
hasn't been
and we
gone
went,
that long.
But when we researched, it was like, oh, actually, they go back to about the 1960s. I think it is Happy Meal toys.
Yeah, but not in New
Something like that.
Zealand. Not in New Zealand.
No. But when we were like, okay, cool. And then we went on with the night, and we stopped the method, and we did some other bits. And then a bit later on, Kaya put the headphones back on again and talking to a different group. And it's like, who would like to speak to us? What's your name? Sid. I'm like, okay, that's a bit weird. How old are you, Sid? 8. I'm like, oh, that's a bit coincidental. Okay, cool. Carried on, had more conversations, took it off, did some other things. Maybe an hour or so later, we had a different group in there, and there was a much bigger group. There was about 15 people at that point. Kaya puts the headphones on again. We're chatting. Who's here to speak to us? Sid. How old are you, Sid? I'm still 8.
Now, I'm gonna go down the skeptical debunking road here.
Yep.
She's listening to a radio, right?
Yep.
Is it possible? Because I know damn well if I was in a theatre and you guys were doing that, and I had the capability, because I've got a lot of radios here, I'd be sitting there on the radio saying shit. Do you think someone's doing that?
Well, I'll tell you something. Since then,
Yeah.
we did a similar thing at the lake house.
Yeah.
Okay. There was Sam, Mark, myself, Kaya, and another guy, Cooper, there. And Kaya did the same thing. She's sitting there, and Sid came through again.
Oh.
And Sam's asking, how old are you, Sid? 8. And Sam's asking questions like, what is your favorite color? Orange. And it was just like everything was pretty in line with what was being asked.
So is Sid
What's your
following
favorite
your daughter?
animal? Well, that was the question. So she actually was a bit interested in that. And we did ask, are you related to any of us? And he said, the girl.
Oh.
And so she and I have done one at home. We haven't told her dad. And yeah, Sid came through again.
Okay,
and
so have you worked out who Sid possibly is?
No. When we asked Sid, do you visit or do you live here? Because I was sort of going, is he attached to her, or what's the situation? He said something along the lines of, I go to school with her. So I think it's like he's saying, I visit, I come and go.
So this brings up another interesting thing then, you see, right?
Yeah.
People, when we have, just assume that a spirit is attached to one place. So what you're actually implying here, and I'm not,
no,
getting down on you. So the implication there is then that spirits could move from place to place. They could choose to go wherever they want to go.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I mean, I do wonder if, though, by doing that, it's giving the intent that I'm open for communication for anyone that wants to communicate with me.
Well, that's true.
It's kind of like you're holding out an open phone line.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sold on it.
No.
I'm not sold on it yet.
No.
But, I mean, again, some of those answers, like, I'd ask, like, do you like her friends at school? And the answer came back, some of them.
Why don't you ask it next time how it's related to you? Because that would be fascinating.
I did. And it came back, I knew your grandmother.
Okay.
And also, Sid said, talking about me, because it was only me and my daughter in the house at the time, and he'd said, I watch you too. Okay, so
here's a theory for you, okay? And this is entirely plausible. I'll talk about my in-laws here. My father-in-law had an older brother, and it wasn't until, I don't know, he must have been in his 50s or so, that he was at one point a trustee of the Anglican cemetery in the town he lives in North Canterbury. And there were some graves there that were unmarked. And he was going through the register of the burials in that unmarked place. And he found a listing for his mother and father that they'd had a daughter between his older brother and him that was stillborn. And she was one of the ones buried there, right?
Yeah.
Now, his parents never ever told him about that. So is this conceivable that he says he knew your grandmother, so possibly it's a sibling or a cousin that simply that generation didn't talk about because it died when it was 8 years old?
Yep, potentially.
You know?
Although the McDonald's Happy Meal toy throws a spanner in that.
It does. Well, there. See, that is the.
But it could be a different relative. You know, it could be an uncle or the cousin along those lines. Or my family are quite prolific breeders. So
here's a theory. What's to say it's not a spirit of an elderly relative that's died, but on the other side he's 8 years old.
I mean, I certainly think that, if I lived to 80 and I passed away and I wanted to haunt Kaya, I'm certainly not going to be this 80-year-old woman haunting her. I'm going to go back to being 19 again.
Well, that's kind of what everyone assumes with spirits, isn't it? It's like that. That is fascinating. Now, you've tried this with Kaya, so you've had the female do this Estes thing. Have you ever tried it with a boy the same age? That would be fascinating.
Not of the same age, no.
Okay,
I'd need to find one.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting.
Yeah, but Sam had a go the same night doing exactly the same thing, and he just, Sid did not come through to Sam at all.
Yeah.
So, which you would think if perhaps it was something like it was on repeat.
Yeah.
A certain sound that sounded like that or anything like that. You would think that maybe it would come through again, which it didn't. And also, we got Cooper to do it as well. I think Cooper's about 15, 16, so he's not that far off.
Right.
But he wasn't really getting anything similar level either. So it would make sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Or maybe it's females again are more susceptible to
possibly
to the communication. That's where I was trying to get at. If you had a male of the similar age, because as you say, that age we're a bit more susceptible to things. You could experiment here with your daughter and a male of the similar age in the same place, trying the same. You would soon see if it meant that the male or female was more susceptible, because I just have a feeling that women have got a bit more of a, sense of those sort of things, than us guys. I don't know. It's certainly interesting. I wanted to finally, just before we go, address something you talked about earlier, this doppelganger thing. Now, that is really interesting, because that opens up my theory earlier of a parallel universe, right? Or can spirits manifest how you want to see them?
Possibly.
You see that?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, for example, if I go to, I don't know, I might go to there's a place in North Canterbury, where, an old pa there where Maori were completely wiped out by Te Rapraha when he came down and wiped them all out, right? So, if I went there and I'm standing there, do I see the spirit of the Maoris as I want to see them? A Maori warrior or a Maori woman as I want to see them? Or do I see, you know what I mean? It's like, I want to see it that way, so does it manifest to me that way? Like if I go to the side of an old shipwreck, do I see there's a spirit there? In my mind, I think, this is how a sailor dressed in those days, so it manifests to me that way. It's certainly interesting, but the doppelganger is, to me, it's more leaning to the parallel universe thing.
Well, you might have to invite Natasha on, get her to talk to you about her experience.
See you later.
Okay,
thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Well, that's another episode here of Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. Thanks very much for tuning in. A big thank you to Aimee from Paranormal New Zealand for having a chat. Don't forget, if you want to have a chat, drop me a line, the roadie@outlook.co.nz, or if you're online on Facebook, you know how to message me. So drop me a message there too. Until next time, here's Christchurch band Sins of Eve and a track called Creeping.
prepared? Something's falling for you inside your head. Me, creeping up now, take you over the ground. Here I am, yes I am, falling from my heart. Taking step with caution, falling behind. Understand what you say, forget some rhyme. Taking what I can from what I feel. Saving it to leave, not gotta fail. Me, creeping up now, take you over the ground. Here I am, yes I am, falling from my heart. Can you feel me creeping up now? I've come to take you underneath the ground. I start to ask myself this: are you prepared? Something's falling for you inside your head. Me, creeping up now, take you over the ground.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.